Good morning and welcome to Backyard and Beyond. This morning we're visiting with Tina Lords, who she's not just with, she has the Something for You store. So good morning to you, Tina.
Good morning.
Tina, I've been wanting to visit with you about quilting specifically because I know you have lots of things going on related to quilting. But first, just in case people didn't hear us visit some time ago, almost probably close to a year ago, let's talk a little bit about Tina. When did you start getting interested in sewing specifically?
I actually started sewing when I was in high school, and that's when I made my very first quilt. I had an awesome home ec teacher who taught me how to make it, and that one was actually hand quilted when we were done.
Oh yes, that takes a lot of time. But you know, I that's the part of quilting I think I would really like is the hand quilting. Was that a real chore for you, or did you love every stitch you put into it?
It was fun at the beginning, but it went on way too long for the size of quilt that we did.
Yes, that does take lots of time. So now people do that in groups at churches and so on. But there's another alternative to hand quilting, and you use that sometimes?
I do. It is now machine quilting, and we actually have a machine quilting right here at the store.
Okay, good to know because that's sort of the finishing touch. But a little more about you, Tina. How did you decide that you wanted to do this business? Because it's more than quilting, it's lots of things. You know, what prompted you to do that?
I wanted something different, and I was getting tired of the long hours in the corporate world, and we had done some home-based businesses out of our house for a little while, and we enjoyed that, and we just kind of like took a little leap of faith and put our little plan together and said, okay, let's try it and see what happens. And the space here was available, had been available for several months. We were keeping our eye on it, and we thought it was the perfect location.
Yeah, right there on Main Street in Atlantic. You can't hardly miss it. The address is?
421 Chestnut Street. We're right between Family Vision Center and Geis Perry Jewelry.
And always fun stuff in the windows, always. Usually pillow pets and some quilts and purses and more and more and more. But today we're going to talk about quilting, and you've got some classes going on. So let's talk a little bit about the kinds of things you do in the classes.
We tailor the classes around what people want to do, whether it's quilts, whether it's table runners, whether it's bed runners, or whether they would actually like to make a piece of clothing, whether it's an apron or shirt or a pair of pants.
Okay. So you have sewing classes. Those aren't quilted, I don't think, the aprons. And so you have lots of options there. But saying some of the things about quilting, I'm thinking, you know, it could be pretty daunting if you started out with a queen-size bedspread. But you have alternatives.
When we do instructions and talk to people who are interested, we usually start out with like a lap throw. And then as people progress, even while they're in that class, if they say, hey, I want this to be bigger because I'm having so much fun, then we'll give them information on how to make it bigger, whether it's more squares or just adding bigger borders to it.
Now, quilting has become really, really popular in the United States, I think across the country. I just had some guests from England, and they said, nah, quilting isn't a big deal there, or at least what they knew about. So that's kind of interesting. That's really become a very much a hobby and obviously a business. Do you have any theory about why that's happened, Tina? I mean, thinking about why are people so interested in quilting?
One of the reasons I think is because they're so useful. Everybody needs a quilt or a blanket to throw on, and you have so many uses for them. There are people that throw them in their vehicles for when they're traveling. You know, people have them in various places in their houses so that they always have, you know, it's right there where they can just grab it and throw it over them. Quilts are very popular for newborns.
Nice gift.
They are very nice gifts. I've seen some very nice ones. So there's just many uses for it, and it's not something that you'll waste your money on.
So if somebody isn't quilting now, is there any special equipment or tools? I mean, is there something you'd need to go out and buy to say, okay, I'm going to start quilting? I know there's some things that would be really useful, but is there anything they'd have to have?
There's nothing specifically that you really have to have. I mean, you can have just a regular pair of scissors and still cut your fabric the scissors way. We call that the old way. But if they do want to get something a little easier, we say get yourself a mat and a pair of rotary cutters. And they'll last you through more than one quilt. They'll last you for several of them. And that's going to be the quick way to cut your fabric going forward.
And I'm assuming it would be a good idea to have a sewing machine, although quilts used to be done completely by hand.
They used to be done completely by hand, and yes, a sewing machine would be nice.
But you don't need a special one, just a straight stitch one will do to start out with.
Yep, just a very basic sewing machine will get you through a quilt.
Okay. What about, are there any special threads as you start working on a project? Would there be any threads that would be better for quilting than just something I may have had sitting around for 5 years at my house?
Any all-purpose thread will be fine to like piece your quilt together. When you actually get into wanting to quilt it, whether you want to do something on your machine, then we want to talk about a little heavier thread so that it will actually hold your various layers together better and longer.
And I'm thinking some of those have been laying around, might not last as long either. And my goodness, you put all this work into it, you want it to really last for a while. And quilts have lasted. I don't quilt, but I really appreciate quilting. Have some quilts that I think are 100 years old, and I know you've seen some older than that.
Yes, and they are just beautiful.
Mm-hmm. And you know, one of the things that fascinates me is sort of back to the actual quilting, the final stitch. When you turn them over, to me, they're just as pretty as the top side.
Oh yes, and I've seen that in the ones that I've quilted. They're just absolutely gorgeous. It almost makes them reversible.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Any special fabrics that you like to work with? I'm thinking about the people who do denim stuff and so on. Probably not the easiest thing to start with.
No, I would recommend something very simple to start with. Stay with your 100% cotton fabrics and do a very easy pattern.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Are those cotton fabrics, is it a good idea to pre-wash them in case of shrinkage?
I have some people that prefer to pre-wash them, and that's fine. In our classes and everything, we don't pre-wash them. That keeps it a little bit stiffer and actually makes it a little bit easier to sew.
Okay, okay. Now, you mentioned patterns. Let's talk a little bit about patterns, because there are some old historical classic ones. Is that where you start, or what do we need to know about patterns?
Patterns are all across the board, anywhere from very easy beginner to an advanced, experienced person. If you're actually looking to buy a pattern, a lot of your patterns on the back will say a skill level. So you want to look for like something that says easy beginner. Or if people need helpful hints on some easy things to start with, they can come down here and I can walk them through 3 or 4 different easy patterns. We don't actually have to have a pattern to go off of. It's just things that they can put together and do for their very first time.
Okay. When you say easy beginning, I'm thinking most of the quilt pieces might be straight edges rather than octagons and circles and some things like that.
Absolutely.
And maybe even bigger.
Yes, we want them just a little bit bigger, and we want fewer pieces, so it gives everybody some self-confidence that they can do this. We don't want it too difficult to start out with.
Okay. Now, one of the fun things I'm thinking, Tina, that happens in your class is that people may do the same pattern, the same kind of item, but they pick out different fabrics. And the results are
totally different between each person. You can have the same pattern, everybody's got the different fabrics, and everybody will probably customize it just a little bit to themselves when it comes time to borders around your blocks, and they all look totally different. That's the fun part.
Very unique, and that also kind of stirs the creative juices in some people. I think some people want to be told, this is how you do it, 1, 2, 3, 4. Other people want to be more creative.
That is correct, and you definitely see some of these people that have just become hooked on quilting now really use their creativity and have done some fun stuff.
We should just mention, Tina, what about if somebody's interested in a class, what do they need to do?
They just need to come down and see me and talk to me. We'll have another one starting here probably towards the end of April. We're going to be doing a spinning pinwheel, which is not easy, but it's also still in the beginner category.
Okay. So if you need any help with quilts, and if you want any information about quilts, I think Tina's one of the people to see, and she has all the supplies here, right?
That is correct.
Right. So you can come in and get advice and get your stuff also. We want to thank you very much, Tina Lawrence, for visiting with us today. Tina's with Something for You. It is something extra also, by the way. And thank you for your time, Tina. And until next time, here is a thought. Wise people will make more opportunities than they find.